All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us to the Montana State Teachers of the Year Teacher Leadership Panel. We're joined today by 4 teacher leaders in the state of Montana, all of whom have served as the Montana State Teacher of the Year in the past. And so we're delighted to have them here to talk about teacher leadership, teaching and learning, and everything in between. I'm going to let the panel introduce themselves. I'm Nikki Vredenberg. I'm the 2017 finalist from Bozeman, Belgrade area. I'm currently the Director of Education at Montana PBS. Prior to this role, I taught at a rural school east of Bozeman, mostly in the K-1 realm. So let's meet our panel first. We'll start, I'll be moderating today, and I won't say much other than asking questions. But let's meet our panel. We'll start with Linda. Would you please introduce yourself and talk about one thing that you're particularly proud of in your teacher leadership journey?
Sure. So I'm Linda Rost. I'm the 2020 Montana Teacher of the Year, and I'm a top 4 national finalist. And I teach in Baker, Montana. I teach high school science, grades 10 through 12, biology, chemistry, and science research. And this is my 14th year teaching, and the most interesting so far. And one thing that I'm proud of in teacher leadership is that I've been able to kind of flesh out what are the important moments that I learned certain skills in teacher leadership. And then I was able to replicate that for teachers in my district and help them develop their own teacher leadership skills.
That's great. Welcome, Linda. And let's hear from Kristi.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kristi Borge, and I was just recently named as the 2021 Incoming Montana Teacher of the Year. This is my 10th year of teaching, but my 6th year teaching in Polaris, Montana, which is a really small community of about 100 residents. And I have 11 students in grades 1 through 7 this year, but my school is a K through 8 school. And so my journey into teacher leadership that I'm proud of is that I was able to conduct my graduate research thesis on the instructional planning practices of rural teachers, especially multi-grade teachers. And so I was actually able to go observe 3 of my peers in similar settings in their classrooms and then conduct qualitative research. And then I've just kind of gone from using that to trying to see how we can help teachers in multi-grade positions be more efficient and stronger planners just through professional development workshops and networking with other small school teachers.
That's great. Welcome. I agree. There's definitely a gap in the multi-age educator professional development offerings for sure. So welcome, Kristi. And Dylan, let's hear from you next.
Hi everyone, I'm Dylan Huisken. I'm the 2019 Montana Teacher of the Year, and I teach in Bonner, Montana. I teach 6th through 8th grade social studies. And one thing I'm really proud of in my teacher leader journey is working with the Indian Ed for All office with people like Zach Hawkins and Mike Jetty, and really spreading the word about what Montana is doing with Indian Ed for All and how other states can kind of model off of that, and how the Smithsonian in DC has also looked at what we're doing here in Montana and kind of modeled a lot of their initiatives off of what we're doing. So spreading the word within Montana, but also spreading the word to other states and really trying to network with educators in other states to really get them to think about how they're teaching about their state's tribes, history, and culture. And so that's something that's been a passion work of mine long before 2019 and still is to this day. So yeah.
That's great. Thanks, Dylan. And finally, Anne.
Hi, welcome everybody. I am Annekeith. I served as the Montana Teacher of the Year in 2010, so I'm the most mature of the group. I don't want to say old, but I've been teaching, I think this is year 28, which is really hard to believe. I started my career in a K-8 rural school, same school as Nikki, and I taught multi-age 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th altogether. And I learned more in those years than probably the rest combined. I've spent most of my career as a middle school math teacher, but I've done various roles. One thing I'm proud of is that I've never stopped learning. Every time I change a role in education, I learn and grow. And the other intentional move I made was I was on the track to be an administrator. I actually was a one and done administrator. I served 1 year. and then asked my district if I could return to the classroom because I felt that's where I belonged. And so I really want teachers to know that you can lead without leaving your classroom. That's really important to me, that we're teacher leaders. I think sometimes people think you have to be an administrator to be an educational leader, and I would say all of us can refute that. I'm happy to be here with you.
Yeah, this is a great group. I'm looking forward to this. So we put together a few questions inspired by questions we've had in the panel in the past, but also inspired by our weekly Twitter chat that happens on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. So hopefully you'll join us sometime. We devoted a conversation to teacher leadership back in 2017, I think. So I grabbed some questions from that chat and then took a few others. So I'm just going to be throwing these questions out, and we'll start with one of the panelists and we'll go to each person and let them build on the answers. Those of you, this is a recording, so, and all of the panelists will be on the recording, listening to the recording. It's going to be very meta. And so you'll be invited to ask questions in that format, and then we'll be able to, in the chat box, answer your questions. So we invite you to do that throughout this new professional learning experience in pandemic conference times. So the first question I'm going to throw out to Dylan, and it is to complete this sentence: to lead in education means.
To lead in education means to lead by example. People have to see, and I think know your heart. And I think everything needs to come out of that, where it's obvious who you are as not just an educator, but as a person. And so when you speak about improving something in the school, people know that you're sincere. They know that that's coming from a genuine place, and it's not about power, and it's not about directives. It is about a genuine interest in our most important stakeholders, our children, our students. And so we just have to model everything from the way we teach to how we construct our lessons, to the way we take feedback, to the way we reflect on things, and the way we ask questions, and the way we can hold conversations with our colleagues. So we have to lead by example, so that when we throw something out there, people are more likely to listen and know that you're speaking from not just a place of competence, but from a place of sincerity.
That's great. I love that. Linda, same question. To lead in education means?
I have a story, so I'm going to break the rules a little, but this just popped into my head. So
There are no rules.
we had a trampoline, and my kids wanted us to all jump in it last night, and I was like super tired. I just wasn't feeling it. So we all got on the trampoline, and my husband was jumping in the middle, and I was trying to lay on the side and just like lay there and pop my back and relax and get rid of my headache. And he kept jumping in the middle, and he was like sinking it in, and I kept like rolling to the middle. And I think that's what teacher leadership should be like. Like, I think we should be making waves and doing big things and like pulling people in, right? Like making wakes behind our boats and pulling people in and getting them excited and modeling and being passionate learners ourselves. And I think all of that excitement is really what draws people in. So we should be jumping in the middle of the trampoline and jumping really high and drawing everybody in with us.
Mm-hmm. Despite their protests.
Yeah.
That's great. Thanks, Linda. Kristi, to lead in education means?
It means to be a reflective educator. And so for me, I'm still pretty young in my teaching career. And so I know that, every day I'm going to make a mistake, but I can learn from that mistake. And a lot of times that also means being willing to reach out to others in your position to not only get support when you need it, but also to be willing to reach out and provide support when others might need it. So I really feel like it's that reflection and, okay, what's hard for me right now? And are there others who are also having this problem? And then how can I either change what I'm doing or get support from others to see how they're doing it. So especially in our rural areas, we might not have a colleague down the hall that we can just go ask and talk about it. And so we have to be willing to identify when we're having an issue or problem in our classroom, but then take one step further and think, okay, what can I do what are others doing, and how can we work together to form almost a joint solution? And then not being afraid to share that solution and say, hey, I was really struggling with this aspect of my teaching, and here's what I'm doing now, and then being willing to share that change with your peers.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. I agree. I think the sharing of the struggle is something we definitely need to get more comfortable with, for sure. Anne, to lead in education means?
They all said it beautifully. I don't have a lot to add, but I think back to my early years of teaching when I thought I had all these great ideas and wondered why nobody listened because I was so passionate, and I found it was the way I was presenting the information rather than really the message. So to lead is really about the messaging, and I would urge people to come to the table with a solution. So if you have a problem and you want to present that and talk about it, that's great, and that's what we should do as teacher leaders, but I also think we need to come with a solution. And what I've learned through my years is to say, yes, this is a problem, and so the yes and rather than yeah, but, and that's where we get hung up. So yes, this is a problem, and here's some ideas I have. And if we present ideas, we can move it forward rather than just complain about it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yes, and that's right from ESET squared, right? So our next question, and I think Linda, I'll have you start this off. We're teaching in historic times right now. I mean, nobody has ever done this before, and that's what I'm always telling teachers. You're making history. Congratulations. But what does Montana need from its teacher leaders during this time of pandemic teaching and learning?
I think one thing that I always assume is that everybody's doing the same thing that I'm doing in my classroom, and then I have nothing to share. And then I go present at a workshop or something, and I find out that that's not true. So I think what teacher leaders need to be doing now is sharing what you're doing, because we're building the plane as we're flying it. Every day I'm coming up with new strategies and new pedagogies to reach my students. I have some that are remote, some that are in person. We never know when we're going to go online. We're still in person now, and we're doing really well. But I'm just doing so many things different, and we need to be sharing with other teachers. We need to be reaching out and realizing that nobody really knows what they're doing, and we can use all the tricks that we can possibly get our hands on.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Anne, can you add on to that? What does Montana need from our teacher leaders?
My big push lately has been to ask teachers what are the most positive things coming out of this situation that we can continue and release some of the things that weren't working. And there are many positives happening despite this situation. And so I'm actually creating my own list, but if you start making a list of what's the most positive things that wouldn't be here if we weren't in a pandemic, that we never want to lose. And I really believe we'll never go back to education the way it was. And I'm so proud of that, because my whole career I've complained that education never changes. And here we change. And I think it's going to be a powerful moment in history. So I'm looking forward to the other end of it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. What do you think, Kristi? What does Montana need from our teacher leaders?
So I think we need that example of rigid flexibility. And so I think all like the two others have spoken about is you start to do one thing one way, and then you have to change and you have to be adaptive. And for me right now, it's all about figuring out how to be okay with this change and know, okay, normally I would do it like this, and normally, you know, everything would go this way and I'd have this plan, but all of a sudden you have to be willing to have a new plan and be okay with not, you know, obtaining everything on your to-do list that you wanted to do, or, you know, you haven't incorporated every single part of this technology aspect that you were planning on, and just being okay with doing your best and knowing that just because you had a plan and you were going to try and do a lesson a certain way, understanding that there's some things that you just can't control and being okay with changing up that plan.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. How about you, Dylan? What can you add to this?
Well, to kind of bounce off what Anne is saying, I think we really need to be the voices that are keeping the momentum going. That's something I'm really afraid of, is that if something in whatever going back to normal means. When we go back to normal, are we also going to try to do teaching like we used to do it in 2019 or sorry, early spring of 2020? Yeah, we have to keep this momentum going. We have to keep pushing against the status quo as it was before March of 2020. And we have to really kind of be taking stock of what worked well and share those and be very vocal about those. But I think also being vulnerable with what didn't go well. I think naming the losses, the things that kept us up at night, and what we're planning to do about that, not just complain like Ann was saying, but going to the next step. But yeah, keeping the momentum going afterwards and then being vulnerable about the losses that we're still trying to think through.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Great answers. So the next question is about advice for teachers who are emerging in their role as leaders. And I think I've always felt like I was emerging in my role as a leader. I don't know that I've ever felt like I've arrived. But Kristi, will you start us off? What advice would you give to teachers? You're our brand new Montana Teacher of the Year. You may also feel like you're emerging on this new journey, but what advice would you give to teachers who are watching this recording today and they want to step up and lead within their communities or their schools? What would you have them do, or where would you have them go or get started?
Well, first of all, I do think that even if you are new in your career, you do still have some really valuable tools or strategies or things that you're doing in your classroom every day that maybe you don't realize is special, but it is special. I still know how nervous I was that first time I ever signed up to present at the MFPE Educators conference a few years ago. And I just remember walking into that room going, here's all these teachers and they have more experience than I do. And they probably already know all of this. But, once you get through that first presentation or first workshop that you're leading, I think you just continue to gain more confidence. And then you also realize that it's not just about, here's what I know and I'm going to teach you. It's more of, here's something that I'm doing and what are you doing and how could we collaborate this? So that's kind of how I've started to, I guess, as I've started to present more at workshops or feel like I have more ideas that are worth sharing, is realizing it's not about acting like you know something more than another educator. It's more about figuring out, what am I doing that I think others could really benefit from, and how could I share this idea in a way that's going to further myself as an educator as well. So definitely being willing to put yourself out there and realize that you do have valuable ideas to share, even if it's something small or routine that you do in your classroom every day.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Dylan, what would you add to that? What would you tell emerging leaders?
I would say to any emerging leader who's feeling like, what do I have to add? People probably already know this, kind of the same feelings that Kristi was talking about, is to really put away that imposter syndrome. If you've been teaching in front of kids, you have insights. You have insights that we can all benefit from. And so share those insights openly and honestly, and not in this assumption that the people you're speaking with may have not experienced the same thing, but just that your perspective is valuable and unique. So any emerging teacher leader, if you have that negative self-talk that you're not worthy and you haven't taught long enough, or you know a better teacher down the hallway, that still doesn't mean that you don't have something you can contribute. Because when I won Teacher of the Year, I was kind of scratching my head like, there are better teachers than me in my small little building. And I know that, so just putting away that imposter syndrome and saying, you have something to add to this conversation. And so step up and say it with pride and with confidence.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Anne, what do you think?
I actually wrote down one of my favorite quotes that Kristi and Dylan have already mentioned, but my favorite quote is, great teachers are inspired by the teacher next door. So you have tremendous power with the people right around you. The problem is we like to close our doors and hunker in and kind of hide. And just today I was in a building where I said, do you know that teacher right next door to you has this remote teaching thing not figured out, but she's trying a certain thing to teach synchronously, and So we marched next door and we asked her what she was doing. And honestly, the teacher in the next room didn't know what was going on in that classroom. And you get busy and so reach out and don't be afraid to share your ideas with people right next door. It's hard when you're in a rural school like Kristi is and you're the only person. So I say find your marigolds, and those are your people that are going to be your positive cheerleader group. So it doesn't have to be in your building, could be a Twitter community or an organization like your state content organization, but find people that are like-minded and grow your ideas from there.
Great advice. Linda, what would you say in this one?
I think that we all assume that somebody else is going to step up and do the things that need to be done or fight for the things that we need. And in my district, it was that we didn't really have access to professional development, and we didn't have anything in-house, and we had to travel, and that really bothered me. And so I started talking to other teachers and realized that it bothered them too. But still, even at that point, they were like, well, what are we going to do about it? So we realized, like, we have to make this change. Like we can't wait for somebody else to, because it's been like this for 40 years. So I think that we have to look in the mirror and say, like we are the ones who are going to lead, and you all, whoever's listening to this, you know who you are, and you can each like build the skills that are needed. You can grow them and build them just like our students can, and step up into that position. And so I think we just have to like own it. And like Dylan said, get rid of that imposter syndrome and just do it. Like, just realize that we can grow and learn how to do these things. And we can be that person. So
Great stories. It's giving me all the feelings here. This is awesome. So let's see, Dylan, I'm gonna have you start off the next one. I think, have you started one yet? I don't think so. How do you share your professional voice? Give examples, tips and tricks you've learned.
You know, I'm kind of a novice to social media and trying to share my voice that way. So I won't speak much of that, but it's really about networking and just forming relationships with people across the state and then across state lines as well, and really finding people that you can have conversations with, participating in professional developments, seminars or classes with people from other states, maybe through grad courses that you might be doing, or just some certification that you're trying to get. You know, the national board process is a great process for that too. But just reaching out to other educators, getting that conversation going, figuring out who you can lean on to get new ideas and spread those ideas. But I mean, I really, like I said before, I really like spreading Montana's ideas out to the rest of the country and what we're doing well here. So just really networking, finding your group of people that you can really click with and talk education with. And yeah, social media is great for that. And of course, you know, we have teacher paid teachers and Pinterest and all these other ways we can connect with educators, but networking, in a word.
Mm-hmm. Don't sell yourself short on the social media piece. You're active on Twitter, and I've seen some cool insights that you've shared. So you may be a novice, but you're rising to the top.
Thanks.
Let's see, Anne, how would you answer that? How do you share your professional voice?
Yeah, I feel like this is not one of my strengths either. I am on Twitter. I think the key is having we call it the elevator speech, 30-second commercial. Know what you want to say it succinctly, because if you're one of those that keeps talking, everybody kind of tunes off. So have a 30-second elevator speech, a positive message with a solution. I'm going to keep going back to that. So have ideas that will move the directive forward.
Mm-hmm. I agree. What do you think, Linda? How do you share your professional voice?
I do share things on Facebook, and I probably shouldn't share some of the things I share, but I'm probably not using it as well as I can. But I have had a lot of people ask for units and lessons that I've written. And sometimes I don't even tell people that I've written something, and they're like, do you have something on this? Well, I sure do. So I try to keep them like packaged up and ready to go. And I have a lot of people ask, and so I kind of like just repeat the same email, or just methods. Like I have a lot of YouTube videos, I guess, of different methods. And so I just have like, here's this method, here's some videos, here's this method, here's some units with that fit in. So that's probably the most effective way. And I think that's probably most helpful because there are examples and they're ready to go. And if anybody wants units like this, let me know. I have a really good COVID literacy one, or a scientific literacy one on COVID that I just wrote and finished, and I'll probably be publishing that one. So so that's usually how I kind of share what we're doing. So.
That's great. Yeah, put those links in the chat box when we're there to all of that stuff. Kristi, you're about to embark on a wild year where you get to share your professional voice in a lot of different ways. And how do you share your professional voice? What tips and tricks do you have?
Yeah, so I'm going to answer this a little bit differently because I am still kind of brand new to having, other people beyond my little community want to hear my voice necessarily. But really, I think we can share our voices no matter where you are by involving your community in your school. I think a lot of times, just because everyone's been to school themselves, so adults who are not within the educational system have this schema of what they think school is like. And so one thing I really strive for pre-COVID was to really involve community members in the school, bringing veterans to the school on Veterans Day, interviewing them, inviting local artists or people who had different types of skills into the classroom, and kind of doing a lot of collaboration. And then in that way, you can share your professional voice, not only with other educators, but with your community. And then they start to realize how important you and your school is to just to the community itself. So there's that piece. And then I guess another way to share your voice is actually kind of counterintuitive, and that is to listen and to ask questions. So when I go to, workshops, I'm a member of the Montana Small Schools Alliance, and I might be in the lunch line, waiting to get the buffet. And that's when I can talk to the person next to me and ask them about their school and how many grades are you teaching right now? And do you have to submit your lesson plans every week? And how many hours are you at school every day after school? And so then that kind of actually gives me a chance to hear what other educators are doing and what issues they face. And then that kind of helps me know what's important. So again, I haven't quite fine-tuned how to really put out my ideas, but right now I'm more in the gathering phase before I'm ready to share so much.
Those are great tips, all of you. Thank you. So we have just one final question for everybody, and that is just closing thoughts that you have for our viewers. Anything you want to say about leading as teachers, teaching in a pandemic, learning in a pandemic, all of these things, and what can you give Montana teachers right now? It's mid-October. It's the hardest year we've ever been in. We don't know what's ahead. So what closing thoughts can you give teachers? And I think Anne will have you start.
I'm going to talk about a couple things. I was trying to think of what has been the most pivotal to grow me as a teacher in my career. And Dylan already mentioned national boards, but if you haven't done the national board certification process, I would highly recommend everybody start that journey. You could start a little piece of it now, just to help you keep engaging in our profession. Most reflective practice I've ever done. So that helps you not get mired down in the muck that we're in right now. Also the Teacher Leadership Institute. That is a statewide offering that all teachers across the state of Montana can join. And I think it's gonna go virtual, I'm not sure, but to include some of the rural school teachers in our state. But I've been involved in that, and anybody thinking about teacher leadership, that organization is meant to grow your leadership skills. And if you Google teacher leadership competencies online, there's a rubric that defines teacher leadership in many areas, from policy, association, instructional areas. And when I read those competencies, it's when I went, oh, wow, like I thought I was a teacher leader. And I am in these areas, but in these areas, whoa, I got a lot of work to do. And it doesn't mean you have to lead in all of the areas, but there are areas that you can lead that maybe you've never thought of before. maybe you really are interested in policy and you didn't know what that meant, and it'll define it for you. So digging into those competencies can really help you think about how you could grow as a leader. So I say keep learning, growing. Even though this is really hard, we still can come out of it stronger.
Absolutely. Great. So let's see, let's kick it to Dylan next. What are your closing thoughts? What advice can you give our teachers who are here watching? What programs are there out there for teacher leaders?
Awesome. So, yeah, I can't really add to what Ann was saying. That is all great stuff that I would just rubber stamp right now with my endorsement. But I have two pieces of advice. I think one thing that we really need to do is teacher leaders, especially if you're thinking about how we can keep this momentum going next school year or in 2022 or 2023, it's pay attention to the inequities of your school and your community and our state and our society in general right now, because they're getting highly stratified in COVID. So pay attention to those inequities. We really need to think about how we can solve the ones we see right now immediately as soon as we can, and then also find a sustainable way to really remediate a lot of that. The second one on the flip side of that is practice self-care. A lot of these things like the inequities, they keep me up at night. And so I've been really focusing on going to bed at a decent time, exercise, and drinking lots of water, and just things like that, where I literally have to remind myself to do these things or I'm going to burn out. And it's October, and today was a rough day. I tried to do too many things at once and I was feeling it. So it feels good to end my day with fellow great educators. But yeah, practice self-care, but pay attention. That self-care does not mean tuning out the world, but it does mean occasionally unplugging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great advice. Much needed. Kristi, what are your closing thoughts for our viewers today?
Yeah, so I think right now, especially, we are all trying to balance so much, and there's so many different tasks that we have on our plates. And so for me, what I'm trying to do to kind of echo what Dylan said with the self-care piece is really prioritizing, like figuring out, okay, what is the most important task or thing that I need to do this week or this month that I can really focus on. And then that way you can kind of focus your efforts and not feel totally overwhelmed. And realizing if you don't get that app downloaded or you haven't trained your students how to use this platform and that platform, it's okay. You've got the basics. And so that's really what I'm focusing on is just prioritizing my efforts. And then once I've got that system down, I can move on. And then I also actually have just a resource that I really love, and it's a podcast, and I listen to this and it kind of just makes me feel better about everything. And it's Angela Watson. She does a Truth for Teachers. She also started the 40-hour work week club for teachers, but she has a huge array of different educators on there from all sorts of diverse backgrounds. And I just love her podcast, very positive. And if you even just have, 30 minutes a week, you can listen to that podcast. And so that's one way that I kind of am reaching out to people who are beyond the scope of Montana, but I just really appreciate her podcast. So that's Angela Watson's Truth for Teachers.
That's a great one. I love that one. Yeah, she's got a lot of great resources. She's got a lot of cool stuff. So thank you, Kristi. Linda, what are your parting words for our group today?
So I guess I kind of have an answer for what programs to look at, but from a different angle. I think any program or any professional development that we do, we should be grounded in something really foundational. And for me, that is, and what I really reflect on and I'm working on also is like, how do I perceive students? And how, like the idea that they are really complex, beautiful human beings who are growing and learning, and that are like, and just the idea that it is an incredible honor to get to be their teacher. Like just think about that feeling, like that we have this really incredible opportunity to pour into their lives. And that's a really unique place in a person's life, and that we really need to cherish that. So I try to ground myself in that, and not in, so like I'm thinking about what Dylan's saying and what everybody was saying about how we need to really take hold of this COVID situation and really run with it and make sure that we keep pushing the boundary. And I think for me, that's my foundation. And I think there's a lot of things that we're doing wrong in education, and a lot of like the power structures in classrooms and how we do grading and how we teach, and all of that stuff is messy and wrong and doesn't value that human and that the human work that we're doing. So that's kind of what I ground myself in, and also constructivism, and that students are constructing their understanding on prior knowledge and all of that. So with that in mind, I also encourage teachers to always pick one thing, like one professional development thing that you're working on all year, like one program, like maybe do Teacher Leadership Institute or work on your master's. I think teachers should definitely do that. That's when I learned how to write, was doing my master's, because we had to write a lot. And always be a student. I think if we're always like in that learning space, and we're always in that uncomfortable, like stuff is hard space, then we don't forget what it's like to be a student. So all of those things are good. The Teacher Leadership Institute, national boards, and getting your master's. And Dylan and I are working on our PhDs right now. And so are you, right, Nikki?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, but yes. Mm-hmm.
You just can't stop. So I think that's really important, but I think all of it should be grounded in like something really important and foundational. And in that foundation, we need to find joy. Like, and because there's a lot of messy, hard things that happen in teaching, and we can have bad days, but if we find joy in that thing, that little nugget that we get to do this thing every day with students and learn with them, like that's really powerful for me. That's what like really pulls me through because this is a really hard year. Like and I feel so not connected with my students, like, because we have masks and I'm distancing and I'm like cleaning all the time, and it's just weird. It's just a weird space. So
I'm going to jump in on Linda's comment. I talked to a colleague this week who said she felt like she's been looking down all year, looking down at her to-do list, and you're saying the masks, and she said, there are a lot of people right now that are not okay. Teachers, fellow teachers, students. And she said, I don't feel like I've been looking up and seeing that. So we all have to remember, don't just keep your head down and get the work done, but look up, be aware. Some people are not okay right now. And just reaching out to them can make the difference between, a really bad day and a day you can get through. So.
And I think it's weird that we're all like pretending everything's fine, and we're just doing life and school, and it's not fine. Like this is fine. And maybe it's okay to not pretend that for a little while, and
yep. Mm-hmm.
And like kind of rest in it, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I loved what you said about, it is a privilege. I mean, it's hard, but it is a privilege to, I used to chase kids down the hall, and when they were in middle school, and make them thank me for teaching them how to read. It's like, I taught you how to read. You'll always use that skill. Thank me. But really, I really saw it as a privilege. I gave these kids a foundational skill that they were going to take with them everywhere they go, that no matter what, they always have to know how to do that. And I think I loved what you said about focusing on that joy. This has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much, all of you, for giving up a little bit of your afternoons on what was probably a long, hard day. I think that we're giving a gift to the teachers that tune in and watch this later on. And like I said, we're live in the chat box right now, so feel free to ask us questions and let us know what you liked and what else you'd like to talk about. And I'm sure we'll all put our contact information in there if you'd like to follow up with any of us. And as Linda said, we're Montana State Teachers of the Year is an organization devoted to cultivating leadership and fulfilling a leadership in Montana. We have a mission to further leadership in Montana and grow leaders. We have a website with a blog, so if you'd like to read more inspiring messages written by our members, check it out there. We've also got a Twitter page and a Facebook, and you can see our work there. We thank all of you for joining us today, and we hope you're enjoying the MFPE conference. And stay well and enjoy the fall.
Thanks, Nikki, for hosting.
Thank you.
Thank you.